There's been a couple articles in the paper detailing this over the past couple of weeks. I'm going to start with a very, very brief history lesson. In 1967, let me go back. In 1961, Hickory City Council at that time put together a committee to look at the Hickory City Charter. That committee, I think it was maybe 5 or 7 people at the time. The goal, or I guess the purpose of that, was to bring the Hickory City Charter more in line with state statutes and the way the other cities across the state were doing business. Several recommendations came out of that committee. Some of the recommendations were that instead of having city council appoint a fire chief or a police chief, that the city manager take over that responsibility. Another one of the other things that came out of this was that they recommended at that time in 1961 that we move in Hickory from a ward system of electing representatives to an at-large system. That was the only proposal that committee made that was not accepted by the 1961 City Council. Fast forward to 1967, this recommendation came back up, and there was some talk, very little talk, but some talk. And on March 6th, I think, it was a Monday, City Council met during a special meeting on a Monday morning and voted to make Hickory City City Councilman elected at large. Because of the way cities work, you have to read it twice, you have to vote on it twice, it has to be passed twice. So that was on a Monday. On Tuesday, at their regularly scheduled meeting, they voted again to make it an at-large system. It passed a second time. So we've essentially changed the way Hickory City elected officials are elected. The interesting thing, the first vote on the Monday morning was a 5-2 vote. One of the council members wasn't able to make the meeting. On the Tuesday night meeting, it was a 4-3 vote. It was not a unanimous decision. It was a very divisive split decision, 4-3. Another interesting thing, there was no public input, none whatsoever. The council met, they read it, they voted, they passed it. There was some requests for public input. They were all denied for whatever reason. State Representative Reed Poovey actually made the suggestion that they hold a referendum in 1967 and let the citizens of Hickory decide on this. That was poo-pooed away. There was not a public hearing during the city council to allow the citizens any input whatsoever. Another interesting thing, this was in 1967, this was March of 1967. The change did not become effective until 1970, 2 3/4 years later. I've always asked the question, I haven't got any answers to this yet. If it was so important to do, if we have to pass this within a 36-hour period, but it's not going to take place, it's not going to become effective until 1970, over 2 years later, what was the urgency to get this thing passed so quickly, so quietly, so hastily? So that's that. That's the history lesson. Since 1967, council members have been elected by wards. At large. You have to live in your ward to run from that ward, but essentially everybody's elected citywide, just as the mayor is elected at large. So basically you have 6, counting the mayors, you would have 7 mayoral campaigns as far as cost and time and everything that you put into it. About 2 years ago, 3 years ago now, I ran my cousin Hank's campaign. I was his treasurer. And he was opposed, or he opposed Mrs. Ann Hoyle. And having gone through that election, we had less than 10% turnout in that campaign. Less than 10%. We spent $2,000 to run citywide. And just the turnout was depressing. To spend that much money for no more result than what we got. So I met with some friends. I want to say the word Democrat in here. I hope I'm not shot or escorted out. But a group of us that I got to know over the course of that campaign, there was 8 of us total. There was 4 Democrats, there were 4 Republicans. There was 4 whites, 4 blacks. We started talking about just some things in the city, my experiences having just come out of a paint campaign, and the low voter turnout, just the low participation in the city from its citizens. How do you change that? That was my goal. How do you change that? How do you get people involved? How do you convince them that politics isn't something that happens in November every 4 years or every 2 years, that it's something you can be involved in every day? Talked about term limits. Talked about, how do you get more people involved to run as candidates? How do you get voter turnout to rise? So we settled on changing. We did some research and learned about. Up until this, I didn't know about the 1967 and what happened in the 1960s. Once we researched that and learned of the change in 1967, kind of the light bulb went off. Well, why was it changed? Can't figure out why it changed because there's not a public record of why it was changed. It's just that it was changed. Well, how do we change it back? Did the research, found out that the citizens could change it back if they wanted to through a petition. So we filed a petition with the county Board of Elections. They set the goal at 2,556 signatures. That's 10% of the registered voters in the city of Hickory. And we all went off to the races. We spent we filed that in July 6th. We had 365 days to get the required number of signatures. And the petition was certified at the Board of Election meeting on July 3rd, which was maybe appropriate given the nation's birthday. So anyway, we did that. It was certified. We're having an election, a special election on September 18th. The pros to have ward representatives instead of at-large representatives, just what I said, voter participation, voter turnout. The city did a wonderful, wonderful job. The city council and Mr. Berry and Mr. Crone did a wonderful job at the meeting yesterday, having the League of Municipalities and the Institute of Government come in and basically talk about the different forms of representation that cities across the state have. One thing in their research that they came to inform us of, which we already knew, was just the abysmally low voter turnout, less than 10%. And then it's my belief, and others believe, over 2,700 people signed this petition. If we go to a ward-style representative government, you're going to have more participation because your vote is going to matter more. You're going to get to know your candidate on a more personal level, more intimate level. We have neighborhood associations in Hickory. I think there's 7 of them, 6 or 7 of them. The turnout there is low. I go to the Green Park, I go to the West Hickory. You get the same 10 people in the room month after month after month. My opinion, if you had a ward-style representative election system, you would have candidates who would attend those neighborhood association meetings. You would have people realize they have access to candidates, to elected officials at these neighborhood association meetings. People are going to start caring more about their own neighborhoods. The cost of an election, like I said, Hank spent nearly $2,000 to run citywide. Less than 10% turnout. If you went from the current at-large system where you're spending anywhere, and $2,000 was on the low side. I think you could maybe spend as much as $3,000 or $4,000. If you went to a ward-style government, or just a ward representative election system, $500 max would be an effective campaign. It would open it up to more candidates. In the past, I think I counted, in the past 17 city council elections, and that encompasses about 8 to 10 years. Only 8 of those campaigns were contested. Everybody else ran unopposed. Nobody wants to run. It's expensive. It's prohibitive. It's intimidating. You have younger people like me who went to college, came back to Hickory, raising a family. We don't have the name ID citywide that incumbents have, or somebody that's had a professional life there for the past 30 or 40 years. Older people, people that are retiring to Hickory, who were involved in politics wherever they moved from, come to Hickory and realize, I would still like to be involved, but I have to run citywide. I'm not known citywide. It's intimidating. So a retiree that comes to Hickory that was working elsewhere, wants to come to Hickory, wants to be involved politically. It's intimidating. They're not known. Just because they haven't been involved in politics elsewhere, just getting involved in politics is intimidating. Cost per hectare, 2 minutes? Okay. I did use the 10 minutes. Bottom line for me and the people that I've talked to in getting support for the petition, which has led to this, was just that. Increase voter participation, increase a sense of pride in your community, revitalize the communities, the individual communities, bring the cost down so that you can bring voter participation up and bring candidate participation up as well, and get involved. One other thing, it's conservative principle. Small government, local government. The closer we can get our elected officials to the people that actually elect them, the better off we are. To me, that's just a conservative principle across the board, something I believe in, and it's one of the reasons I got involved in this. Can I take more time since he left?
I don't know, we'll see. You got 1 minute.
Yeah, there's some more I'll get into. I guess I'll save that for my 5-minute rebuttal or any questions that you guys might have.
Now, your candidate was elected.
My candidate was elected.
Right.
I've since apologized for that. He's a good guy.
That's his cousin.
That's my cousin. He's a good guy. He's done a relatively good job. You know, one other thing, and I'll repeat this for Rudy. If you look at city council, they're elected at large. 98.5% of the time. 98.5% of the time. Almost every time. They vote unanimously. Across the board. 7-0. There's no discussion. There's no discussion of ideas. There's no discussion of different points of view. It is statistically improbable that 7 people that many times on that many issues can come to the exact same conclusion.
Since Rudy's not in here, I'll ask.
He's back now.
Oh, he's back. All right, Rudy.
I got called time on.
That's right.
Well, I apologize for stepping away there. My wife's having a medical procedure. I told them it's routine, we believe, and I told them to call me if they had to, and I had a call from the doctor's office. They didn't have a call. I did. It scared me, so I got up. Has everybody seen this chart?
I don't understand. I see it.
What we're describing as a good thing is taking away my right to vote for all 6 Hickory council members and replace it with the opportunity to vote for just one. We're hearing that called a good thing. This isn't just about Hickory. This is about politics, and if it happens in Hickory, it may be tried in your municipality or government subdivision. I don't know all of the history, but I know that today we have the best system of electing our council members of any city in North Carolina. It's often said that Hickory's the only one that has this. Well, it's because for some reason Jillian Whitener and Orrin Klein and a few other people had the foresight to say the best way is to make you live in and be nominated by your ward and then be elected at large. That means everybody's got 6 council members. It means somebody, now don't be fooled by this stuff about how it's going to promote voter participation. Voter participation is going to go down, not the first year probably, but it's going to go down. It's going to go down dramatically. We're going to see council members elected with less than 300 votes in a city of 41,000. I don't want to see that. I think you've got to pass the vetting process and get a majority of the people across the city. Now, admittedly, sometimes that majority is not very big. Folks, if you ever, all of us have been involved in getting out the vote. Is it frustrating or what? What I want to do is get out the vote on this, because the people we talk to who say, you're asking me to give up my right to vote for all 6, to vote for 1, and to take a chance that people are going to set my taxes from all across this city, who are going to decide which roads get paid, and I can't call and fuss at them and tell them I won't vote for them again? That's what this is about. Excuse me, that phone call bothered me a little bit, but it's okay. They were not going to call me unless they had to. What happened here was, first of all, Hank Guest got elected with the assistance of Mr. Wright. Secondly, we voted to close 2 swimming pools in economically disadvantaged areas. Now, we had previously closed one that was used by far more people out on Cool Park, and we have not been put through the ringer on it, okay? 50 kids a day, on average, were using those 2 pools. The cost to bring them to standard and operate them would be $1,200 to $1,500 a year per child. That's based on a 30-year amortization of the cost to build a pool. If you take that and multiply it times the 41,000 people in Hickory, you get a number. If you said, if we had an amenity worth that much money to every person in Hickory, it would cost us $48,000 a year or more. $48 million a year or more. Our total general fund budget is far less than that. The Hickory record, we're often called cronies. I don't have a crony. I've never been a crony, and I don't have any cronies. I am friends with some council members. Friends might be a loose term, okay? None of us are close friends. None of us are business associates. Some of us don't like each other. But yet we vote our conscience for the good of the people of Hickory, and because there's not been enough dissension, they want to say that this is clearly a bad system of government. Hickory people normally try to find a way to get to a middle ground. I'm scared of the scorched earth that we're looking at coming out of this election. I'm very afraid of that. There was a letter to the editor that talked about Republicans being involved in this, and we heard it today. 4 Republicans. One of them was Jay Adams, who spoke at the meeting when they brought the Democracy in North Carolina, and Joe said he has not decided whether he's for this or not. That's what he told us at that meeting. Tom and Joe were 2 others, and then the guy from Durham spent most of his time talking about how to register convicted felons. My role in this, some people are saying I'm unethical for being involved. I took on the unions, I took on the water battle, and I said, on my watch, they're not going to say that this happened. And I didn't stand up for it. Now, I could take the statesman role and sit back and say, democracy will out. Democracy will win this. Go at it, guys and gals. Y'all go out there and do it. But I live with my conscience the rest of my life. This is my watch, and I'm going to do everything I can to defeat this proposition. A lot of money and time is being spent on this. Some of the people said, well, council, you should have just said, we're going to change this system, and we're going to have this system right here. Why would we do that? A, we're opposed to it. B, the people we talk to are opposed to it. And C, there's a legally constituted referendum going to be held on this in September the 18th. Why should we step in and say, voters, we're going to take away your right to vote on this? If this happens, we're going to face we possibly will face other referendums. One referendum might be partisan elections. I don't know what happens in Catawba County if you had partisan elections by ward. Okay. Now I would talk to you about the benefits of having ward representation at the county level, but I'm not going to talk about ward representation in partisan elections. And I'm certainly not going to talk about it when we have a referendum here that's clearly being driven by liberal groups and a handful of Republicans. But it's being driven by the liberal groups. That petition was not going to make it. They were not going to have their 2,700 votes. And one of the parties got involved and made it happen. So, do I got more time?
You got 1 minute.
Well, I just want to say this. I've talked very candidly to you. I've talked more candidly than I do in public. But I know this group. You need to know that we're headed towards scorched earth, and I'm worried about September the 19th. All we want to talk about is, do you want to give up your right to vote for all 6 and vote for just 1? Do you want to, if you have a council member who goes to your church, wouldn't you like for them to feel accountable to you? Or if it's your civic club or your country club or you work with, under this system, you'd have one person, perhaps elected by 300 or fewer voters, and that would be your council person. And then there'd be somebody across town voting on things that affect you and priorities. The last thing I want to say is the signs that this group has put out. First of all, they're saying, say no to the elite. Okay, say no to the elite. That is classism. That is scary. The second part, no more $1 million tents. That's a blatant, outright untruth. Why in the world would you put something that's untrue next to say no to the elite if you are not trying to inflame? So, guys, I'm going to do everything I can to avoid the scorched earth. I encourage the other side to do the same. It may be too late. Thank you all.
Thank you, Rudy. 5 minutes.
5 minutes.
And if you don't take all your time, I'm sure Rudy will take.
I'll address 2 things. First, your right to vote for six ward representatives. This election does not take away your right if it passes, because if you say you have a right now, because of the way the law is written, that you have a right to vote for all 6 ward representatives, and that I'm taking that away from you if this thing passes. My question back to you is this. In 1967, I live in Ward 5. In 1967, had I been alive, and the council voted the way they voted in 1967 to change the system, my right was taken away to keep you from Ward 2 voting in my ward. Okay? That's what the law says. The law says you vote for your ward, I vote for my ward. The city council took away my right. I'm not picking on it. It's not a right. Just because it's written in the law, it's not a right. Maybe Jay could expound on it. I won't throw you under the bus today. It's not a right. But that's the word they're using. It's not a right. If it is a right, then my right was taken away in 1967. It had been that way for 100 years. The city of Hickory elected council members by ward for 100 years. It's the way it was originally put into the charter. The second thing, here's the words we've heard so far today. Scorched earth. I'm going to go back a little bit. And in letters to the editor, we've heard the word radical. I've been called a radical. Comments that I've made publicly have been called sinister. This is Rudy's Facebook page. right here. In it, he refers to people that will be elected as crackpots. Your hypothetical scenario seems more likely under the present system. If the voters of a ward want, well, no, I'm sorry, that was a response to Rudy. What if your choice doesn't win and a crackpot does? Referring to a candidate running for city council. I don't believe a mayor should talk about his constituents like that. I think they should have a right to choose and elect who they want to choose. I think it's unfair to categorize any potential candidate, whether they win or lose, as a crackpot. What does that say about the people that elected them? Are they crackpots as well? I guess I will leave it at that. Again, I don't think my language has been inflammatory. I haven't used scorched earth, radical, sinister, crackpot. That's coming from their side. I got an email today, or yesterday actually, from Franklin Lawson, where Rudy talks about the untruths, the mud, basically lies that have been spread. Again, my presentation and anybody that I've talked to about this referendum, anybody that I've talked about the petition, has been based on the historical record as it is. I haven't used any inflammatory language. I haven't used any untruths. Point of view, we can have different points of view. Doesn't make yours a lie and yours any more valid than anybody else's. So I'll leave it at that and take the questions later, right?
Right.
Right.
I'll refer back to this chart. Mr. Brannock started with the comment, you still would have the right to vote for all six. That's what he said. I don't know what he meant, but that's what he said, his first sentence. You would have the right to vote for one. Secondly, it is a right. It's written into the city charter. It's a basic right we have in Hickory to vote for all six. Yeah, I used the word crackpots. I had a friend write and said he'd rather have one person representing him. And I said, well, what if it's a crackpot and they don't represent you? Then you don't have anybody. Then somebody else writes in, what's a crackpot? I said, a crackpot is a crackpot. I don't know. Okay? I had somebody say knuckleheads. Has this country ever elected any crackpots and knuckleheads? Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. That's what I'm just saying, come on. Somebody might get elected that you don't like, you don't feel comfortable talking to, you have no rapport with, and then you don't have the other five to talk to. Now, you might be able to prevail on their good-naturedness, okay? I'm not going to, this thing about, we got these phrases like, we have said some awful things about people. That's not true. If crackpot is an awful thing to say about some mythical person, I'm guilty. I've used it many times in my life because I happen to think there may be a crackpot in Hickory somewhere. I haven't run into him or her. I never have. However, to say that there's no untruths, and all you have to look at is their sign that says $1 million tent. The cost of that tent is approximately $501,000. They can argue all they want to, but why put on their $1 million tents and inflame people? $1 million. Who in here rounds 501,000 to a million? I don't. 501,000 is 501,000. And I don't call anybody in Hickory elite. They are voters, they're non-voters. I don't call anybody elite and post the signs all of these places that inflame people. Remember, this is the key thing you need to remember. You have 6 votes for 6 council members who are accountable to you. And you're giving it up to have one. Thank you.
Thank you, Rudy. We do have time for question and answers or questions to either party, either gentleman.
I have a question. Could this trickle down or trickle up to like the county commissioners and say, okay, we have to vote on a county commissioner on this end of the county, this end of the county, this end of the county? Could that be coming next
Well,
If this passes,
well, the same logic
what
would
I mean?
apply. The same logic would apply. Now, I don't know what are there 100,000 county voters, registered voters? They'd have to get a lot more signatures.
I mean, we couldn't have two people from Conover or two people from
Same
Newton
district.
in the same section running for county commissioner. If this passes, could that trickle down for that? kind of
What I
thing?
said was, don't think this is just about Hickory. If it works in Hickory, we are going to see speculation, perhaps petitions started, to extend this to other places where the representation is not what certain people desire.
In Buncombe County, for instance, a state representative, Tim Moffitt, Republican state representative in Buncombe County. I don't know how he did it, I haven't researched it, but somehow the Buncombe County has been forced to go to a ward system in electing county commissioners. It was a Republican-led initiative. Candidates that are running for county commissioner in Buncombe County has shot up, and it's just this is the first year that they're doing that. I will say this though: in Catawba County, or let's go to the state level. In Catawba County, we have two state representatives, Mr. Mitchell and Mr. Helton, soon to be Mr. Wells. I live in Hickory. I like Mitchell Setzer. I can't vote for him. He lives in his ward, but he represents Catawba County. He can't. People down in Ms. Beatty's way, they can't vote for Andy Wells, but he's going to represent Catawba County, and he'll do it well. You know, one thing Hank said to me is, I need to be elected by the city at large because I represent the city at large. I represent the whole city. Yes, you do. When you go to Washington on a Chamber of Commerce event, or when you go to Raleigh to lobby state representatives, you represent Hickory, and that's fine, and you can do it, and you can do it well. When you're in the chambers, on your bi-weekly, monthly meetings, you can represent the ward. And as elected officials, it's a balancing act. When do you represent your ward? When do you represent your district? When do you represent the city or the county as a whole? I think elected officials have traditionally risen to the occasion and performed well, wearing both hats. So, does it come to Catawba County? I don't know.
It'll be brought up though.
I have a question. There are 100 counties in the state. Are we the only county that has this style of representation? How are the other cities? Not the
Cities.
cities, not the counties, but
Well, there's 540.
545 municipalities. Now, 85% have the system we have, except not as good. We are the only one. Well, and then you have in our peer group, 85% of the cities, towns, and cities have at-large voting. It can't be all that bad. We're the only one in our peer group, which is 30,000 to 50,000. There are 12. 8 of those are at-large, like we have. We're the only one that says you must be nominated by your neighborhood and elected at large. The others are just purely at large. San Antonio, I think, has 20 Austin, the most liberal city in the South. They have 20 council members and they could be neighbors just lined up right down the road because they're all at large. So this argument that we need to do this the same way we elect congressmen. A congressman represents 670,000 people. Our Hickory City Council members represent the 6,700 in their ward and the 41,000 at large. An awful lot of people in Hickory know more than one council member that they can call. The numbers don't work out. It ain't the same.
Of those 85% that Hickory's included in, is 545. 440 of them are cities or towns, I guess, of less than 5,000 people. They have at-large elections. There's only 5,000 of them.
Yeah, but in our peer group,
In our peer group.
8 of 12 have at-large. We're the only one that has the superior method, which is you're nominated from your neighborhood and elected at large. It's the best method.
Joan?
Mr. Wright, is this your, I'm a very simple person, okay, and I don't understand that bottom, how this is laid out, what it means. Is this yours?
It is.
Okay.
What I'm showing now, this Ward 1 voter is connected to the Ward 1 council member, is connected to Ward 2, Ward 3, the mayor, 4, 5, 6, because they vote for all of them. Here, there's no connectivity except with Ward 1. Now, they can prevail on the good-naturedness of other council members to try to help them with the problem. But it could very easily be that you don't have any connection with that Ward 1 council member because you don't get along. And then you've got to go somewhere else and say, I can't vote for you, but will you help me?
But is it not the ward, like Ward 1, his to stay connected to the people in his ward and take their concerns before the city council, and they vote together on whether it's good for the whole city? Is that not how it works normally? I kind of see it upside down, you know, because the ward, here you're showing only one, but really each one actually does have a say.
But we don't have, this voter doesn't have any connectivity to them except their good-naturedness.
To the other
To
ward.
the other wards.
Except through their captain or their ward.
Right.
Right. The person they elect. And if they don't like the way they work, they just vote somebody else in, right, the next election.
Well, and you know, the comments made, well, $2,000 is too much to spend to win an election. I think most all of that was contributed by people who wanted to see Hank win. Okay? Hank certainly has not suffered any hardship because he ran for council.
About 80%
You could
of
easily-
that was funded by Hank.
Oh, it was? Okay. Well,
He wanted to win.
Hank's felt no hardship, okay? And you could end up with a situation where it really gets nasty when you get a group of outsiders, another people in another ward, that says, I want somebody other than that person that's in that ward. We're going to raise a lot of money. We're going to get them out.
Could it not
That
happen
gets
both
kind of
ways?
nasty.
Could it not happen in both instances, though?
Well, it could, but it doesn't have. It hasn't happened in the history that I've seen.
Okay.
And again, it's not because we're cronies. Yes, sir.
I'm a neighbor of Hank's out on Harris Farm Road, and when we saw the sign go out there, just maybe Hickory had done that long way to Mountain View annexation. Our taxes are about to double, so that's my check map. I just had one comment and one question. The comment first is that when you talk about voter turnout, to me, when you start doing what I call kneecapping politics, it really suppresses voter turnout. People don't want to mess with the ugliness of politics when it gets that way. And I would hope that if this has gotten ugly, that it'll settle out and everybody be all right. I like both you guys. I wouldn't want to see all.
Well, it does be, but there are some people that need to take some stuff off their websites and other things,
Right.
because it's been very, very divisive.
Well, and that rancor can carry into the general election.
And I can't take off crackpot. I'm sorry.
Well, then, my question is this: is that I'm not a Hickory resident in my office. Hickory municipality is my largest municipality. County is the largest county. County is, but as far as crime is concerned, although I think your crime rate's good and your law enforcement's excellent, just by the nature of the city of Hickory, it's the largest concentration of serious crime in the 25th district. And so my question to you, Joe, and to you, Mayor, is although there hasn't been a lot of contention, Joe said it was something like 98.5% of the votes were uncontested or were unanimous. What are some of the other issues besides voter turnout or the pools that we're looking at voting on? I'm just not familiar enough with Hickory City. I'm concerned about law enforcement, and I'm concerned about city managers, and I want those to continue to be strong as they are right now. What are we talking about as far as the divisiveness that needs to be in city council?
Or something that needs to be changed.
Like I said, I don't have a dog if I don't live in the city, but I'm just curious about that question. What are some of the issues
Well, my answer is
coming up?
My answer is nothing needs to be changed. There's no cronyism. Votes are not always unanimous. Sometimes Sally votes no because we're not liberal enough. Sometimes I vote no because we're not conservative enough. We can live with that. The meeting's over, we go on to something else. The other night I voted no on the fees to be assessed to these internet gambling guys First of all, I'd like to see them not even there, but I felt like if they are not willing to post the odds of losing, they ought to pay double. If they'll post the odds of losing, give them the lower fee. So I voted no.
Follow-up question. Can we do a public nuisance against that club in the back of the city council building? That could be out of hand. That's a club. We'll have that conversation later, but you know what I'm talking about.
I know what you're talking about. I'm parking in the store.
We're hearing about that. We're hearing about that.
I have kind of a statement that follows on Jay's statement about my mother's property that I own, and maybe Jay's property. We're not in the city of Hickory, but we're in the city of Hickory planning area, of which we fall either prosper or suffer by the rules that the city imposes on our properties, but we have no representation. We have no vote. So, you know, how many people are, I guess, affected by that? And I mean, that's a pretty large group of people that have no representation within the city.
Well, this is not going to change that. Okay.
I see that, but either side's not going to change it.
Well, it's not going to change. But I will tell you what we have is, first of all, we're no longer going to have any forced annexation in North Carolina.
Goodness.
Now,
Thank goodness.
and I want you to know something. I'm probably the only mayor who's held my hand up and said that's a good thing. Everybody else wants to attract more taxpayers. They spend and then tax, then they spend and attract more taxpayers. We're not going to have forced annexation. We still have ETJs. That is talked about every time they meet in Raleigh. I'm not real hung up on it here in this city, but there are places where the ETJ and the things that could go on out just outside the city limits could be very detrimental to the city. I'm not hung up on it here.
What's an ETJ? That's exactly what I want.
ETJ, many years ago, being in an ETJ many years ago meant you were going to be annexed someday. That's what it meant. And then, of course, annexation became unpopular, and then with some of the crazy stuff that some of the annexers did, like Monkey Junction down in Wilmington, they said, not only are you coming in, although kicking and screaming, you're going to pay the taxes, and we want $4,000 for water and sewer hookup. Yeah, people were outraged. ETJ, extraterritorial jurisdiction, now means that we have some authority over whether you raise chickens in your yard or whether you put 8-foot wide mobile homes, or anything that somebody might do with their property that you couldn't do in the city. But incidentally, the county doesn't allow those 8-foot wide mobile homes. I'm being very. I'm exaggerating very much. But the ETJ allows us to control traffic patterns to some degree as they're coming into and exiting the city. And we have wielded that power with a very light hand. But we do have that power, not to the extent that some other places do.
And these are areas outside the city limits.
Yeah, they're just outside the city limits.
Explain that those are city areas outside the city limits.
That would be Mountain View and
That would be
Parts of Mountain View. Parts of Mountain View are in there.
us too. We're in it. Yeah. We don't like it, but we're in it.
Get back to Jay's about what's coming up on the agenda, what's coming up, what issues are coming up. I don't know. Here again, for me personally, this referendum is about increasing citizens' voices to be heard. I'll give you an example. Right now, and I didn't bring one with me, I meant to, a city council agenda. If you flip through it, you have the invocation, you have special recognition of people. Then they go to town voting. Consent agenda, public hearings, whatever. They vote, they vote, they vote. Everything's decided. Then at the very end, citizens requesting to be heard. Now, if I have an issue on the consent agenda, item K, that I wanted to speak against, I can do it. But it's already been voted on, and it's already been passed, more than likely. Okay? I think the Cobb County Commissioners here, I know in Iredell County, Caldwell County, Lenoir City Council, Statesville City Council, they have citizens requesting to be heard right after invocation. So that citizens will then have a chance to look through the agenda prior, pick out an issue that they're passionate about, And they can get up and they can make a case, for or against. And then our elected officials go on the record with a vote. In Hickory, our elected officials go on the record with a vote, and then we're allowed to say, shame on you, or way to go. So
Can you not do that at the meeting before? Are you not allowed?
we don't have the agenda comes out on Friday afternoon, and the meetings are held Tuesday.
So you don't know in advance
I
what
don't know
those
in
things are going to
advance.
be.
To talk about the $1 million tent, real quick, very quick.
Is it $1 million?
I don't know.
Well, I told you.
I still don't know. Because we've asked the city manager, can we have a line item budget on this capital project? I know of at least 3 requests that have been sent in. None have been honored. Okay? I don't know how much it costs. I know that it originally was going to cost $245,000 or $285,000. 2 months later, that escalated by 30% to $400 and some thousand. Now we're at $501,000.
Long way from the meeting.
Well, we're halfway there. I'm a half full kind of guy. Well, let's talk about how it was paid for. It was paid for with money. First of all, no citizen input was accepted. No public hearings were held. The city is going to spend $500,000. $500,000. And not one citizen has an opportunity to say publicly, I'm against this. They didn't have public hearings because it wasn't tax money. I was told by a council person I spoke to, we didn't have to hold a public hearing. Well, why not? Because it's our money. It came from the parking deck fund. It's our money. It's not tax revenue. So we can spend that money as we see fit with no public input. Now, is it $1 million? I don't know. I think it's a little bit more than $501,000 because we haven't been given the costs of labor. The city did it, and it wasn't put out to bid. That's another thing too. Mick Berry says when you have a capital project, you have to put it out to bid if it's at least $100,000. This is a $500,000 project, yet it was not put out to bid. So who did the work? I don't know. I was also told it's not a tent, which I agree with because a tent keeps you dry.
All right, guys.
All right.
Well, I won't.
Give Rudy 1 minute.
Well,
Then we're going to have to go.
how we vote. The agenda comes out on Friday. Now, if it's a public hearing, it's advertised a long time before. The agenda comes out on Friday. People have 4 parts of 5 days to contact council members, email us, and express concerns about anything on the agenda. Second, we have overturned votes. After, we have made mistakes. Not often, and they weren't huge, but we've made mistakes. Mistakes is a matter of judgment in the eye of the beholder. Third, we do second readings on important things, which gives another 2 weeks for us to get citizen input. The parking fund, I don't think anybody ever said that's not taxpayer money. It's just some things do not require public hearings. Okay? And I will tell you, the parking fund, the tents and the swimming pools is what this is all about. And I don't think there's any comparison for the tens of thousands of people who are going to use the structure downtown and the 50 kids a day using those pools for 2.5 months a year. Lots of decisions we make we would like to do for our citizens, but we can't afford.
Guys, thank you.
Can I say I do enjoy the shade at the farmer's market, though?
Isn't it beautiful?
The farmer's market is great, isn't it?
We deserve that.